Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Belinda.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well. I'm glad that we are finally getting together and getting this interview down. This will be one of several, because there's so much to cover with your breadth of knowledge. I'm going to start with your bio. I'm here with Jennifer Jeffcoat of Awakened Method. Jennifer is a somatic therapist specializing in pre and perinatal birth psychology, family dynamics, and somatic experiential learning. She founded the Awakened Method, which is a soul's journey to self actualization. Her story is filled with love in understanding relationships with all that honors our birthrights of freedom. She has been holding space for little ones and families for over 28 years as a Waldorf teacher, midwife assistant, lactation consultant, birth postpartum doula, biodynamic craniosacral therapist, pre and perinatal birth psychologist, neurosensory motor integration therapist, and spiritual development parent facilitator. Um, you must have started this work like before you were born. She has a BS in alternative medicine, focusing on homeopathy, and crazy enough, has a master's in public health through the lens of technocracy. That's another interview at another time, which gave deep insight into our trauma. Her somatic experiential learning path reflects her curiosity about being fully human and feeling safe in physical form. This has led her to explore her PhD work in spiritual and somatic psychology. She has trained with many amazing souls along the way and looks forward to growing and sharing all she has embodied with others. Did you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, no, only that, yes, my experience began forming this physical body and how that experience was held, wasn't held, just, all the different layers. So, yes, my journey has been one, just like others, from that space. And it's one that has always brought so much curiosity, to my being as to what is this, what is this form? What is this? What does it mean to be in here? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And now, you've really piqued my curiosity as well
Mhm.
because of so much that goes into that we just do not know at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so you describe the somatic experiential process as a facilitation that trusts individuals to learn from and listen to the information they are receiving from the interaction of the self and the environment. Somatic or embodied knowing is experiential knowledge that involves senses, perceptions, and mind body actions and responses. As someone who has no clue what you're talking about, I mean, I have a little bit of a clue now because I'm reading Joseph Chilton Pierce'
Mhm.
Magical Child,
Right.
and that's mind blowing. Everybody needs to read that book, especially if you're thinking about having a child. How would I even begin to step into this process? Like, what would you recommend as my first step? Just connecting with my body?
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, yes, that is one layer. And it's having just that, just the curiosity, right? The curiosity of what is it to be and live from an experiential plane or experiential way or pathway, whatever you want to call it, is just starting to be curious about what that really means and what it really means to you. I think that is such a big question, is that yes, we have all this outside information in our environment, but what does it really mean to me? And that's usually what I would ask is, so when you read that, what does that mean to you? What would be your starting with that?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like for me, is it like when I am sitting in silence and really just focusing maybe on like one area of my body at a time and like leaving space
Mhm.
for that experience, because a lot of times when we're doing being led through meditation or something, it will say, like now have gratitude for your feet or feel how your feet are feeling, then move on to your ankles, then your calves. But like, does that really sort of have to be more of a really sitting
Mhm.
and really focusing on how are my feet feeling? And this could be like a 2-hour process if I'm going to go through my whole body. Is that maybe what it is?
Exactly. It is about slowing down enough without someone telling us, we can maybe bring attention to, you know, and explore, but it's just, feeling into that. And maybe today is just feeling what my feet, really feel like as I walk on the floor, and just bringing that awareness. We're in everyday life, we're being told how to move, what to do, because of so much of our own programming, but just from the outside world and people and so many layers. And so what if we peel that back and we really, really remove from our vocabulary good, bad, right, wrong, and know that, wow, I'm having this experience. What is it about this experience that my body is telling me? What is my body speaking and trying to move out of this cognitive thinking realm? And from this is that true intuitive realm, what is it truly saying? And that goes, us as adults, as we're trying to figure this out, it does take a lot of slowing down
It
because,
does.
right. And I can give a little example. I think one that I use quite often is children who are in our programs in our little environmental spaces, ecology environmental spaces. When parents are coming in and they see the space from an adult's perspective, because we still are very adult centric. We have a long ways to go to feel comfortable within ourselves to allow to be able to move in a child centric space. Because parents, when they walk in, they're constantly getting activated because their child isn't sitting down. Their child maybe isn't listening and looking at me when I'm speaking. And I have to teach the parents so much about, that's our child teaching us something about ourselves right now in this moment. Why is that? And then you'll see, and I'll, share, just watch your little one, just really step back, watch the activation, but watch what they're doing. And I think the biggest thing is when we call our morning circle, right? So we have a morning circle, but some kids are over still finishing other tasks. Some truly aren't feeling potency to join. And then you have the couple that they run into a circle and they sit and they're excited and then their body gets overwhelmed. So they listen to it. They run out and find access safety. So they go find that safety space and they feel safe. And then they come back in, they sit and they like, oh, I'm starting to feel uncomfortable again. So they run out of circle. This is pendulation for safety. Kids will automatically do it. We have forgotten how to do it. So this is
Probably weren't allowed to do that.
absolutely, absolutely, we're so far. We look at it from, gosh, cultural, social norms. We
Yeah.
still today sitting placid, listening. Everyone has to listen by looking and, hearing you. There's no way you could still listen and be looking this way. That couldn't happen. But yes, we can.
Yeah.
So that again is about that assessing for safety. And because our storylines, right, are so fragmented and dysregulated, we're kind of like, well, I'm not quite sure what that means. And because our pace of life, it doesn't give us permission to sit in that slow space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why you offer so many workshops and classes that help parents work through that space.
Hmm.
Right.
Right.
I want to read an excerpt from a testimonial on your website. Understanding my own trauma has enabled me to better understand the needs of my child. Behavior issues during toddlerhood can be so frustrating and confusing at times, but the Awakened method has taught me how to check in with myself, identify my feelings, my needs, and whether or not I'm feeling activated from past trauma. In doing so, I am better able to self regulate and can become more available for my child in facilitating her support. Would you say that the best way that parents can support their children to develop in a healthy way is to work on themselves first? And not even just like work on themselves first, but continually working on themselves?
Absolutely. Without us knowing ourselves in these deep ways, these really understanding the light and the shadow parts. And again, is even from I always kind of use the tantrums, the twos, the threes, parents. So this is yes, a phase they go through, but how and what, we as parents get so triggered in that moment. And it is why is that? They're 2 and 3. What is it about this 2 and 3 year old that is triggering us so much? And it stems from that our own experience, how it was held, how it wasn't held, how it maybe was shamed and guilted. And so, because we didn't have the experience held, we didn't have the education or learn how to hold, we didn't learn it for ourselves. So, how can we model that with holding that support for our child without this sensation, right? These activations, these storylines coming up in those moments of trying to support our child.
What I'm hearing you say repeatedly is, well, what I'm getting from it is sort of like as parents working with children, it's it's really helpful to just observe,
Mhm.
right? And feel. Because I think as parents, we automatically go in and we think, oh my God, I have to teach them this. I have to make them do this. And they need to blah, blah, blah. And this is the way it is. And instead of doing that, what would be helpful for the child and your child's sort of healthy unfolding of their soul nature is to perhaps just observe what you're feeling and sit with that, as opposed to wondering what it is you need to teach your child.
Mhm.
Because it seems like oftentimes what we bring to our children in teaching them, especially when they're like baby years, like toddler years, we're stifling their ability to experience their environment.
Right. And that then leads into to fully moving into an autonomous free human.
Right. You offer several workshops, classes, and certifications to help people learn about the 7 developmental identities. You've created a curriculum that supports all the stages throughout the ages from birth to adulthood. Can you please share a little bit about the ages and stages?
Yeah, sure. So there's the full unfoldment in the womb. So it starts in the womb with the landing of the spiritual developmental years. We go from all the way from the heart landing, and I'll even back up, going to the landing of our, if you want to say, our crown chakra, our knowing, our our layer of which would be the cognitive realm, if I could speak on it from a Western term, the cognitive realm is already landing. That is the first to land. And that's all about from these traditional cultures. That's why they sat under the tree. That's why they called the child in. And they would meditate until they heard that first knowing and the child speaking. and the child and the parent are already speaking before they come in. But once they begin to come into this physical form, and these layers, these spiritual developmental layers are landing from traditional cultures each week, the mothers were doing something to assist with their first realm of education of this developmental layer. And this is why it was so important for the quietness and the stillness and the first trimester of all of these parts of themselves landing and forming this physical form, and having not only the mother, but a society and culture that supported this depth of knowing. And it's still there today. The Tibetans still move in this way and know that these little ones are very sentient beings and are coming in, and their first education is from the womb space.
Right.
And so that is the first initial landing, and the children are getting the education based off of where the parents are, society is, culture is, and it's one that's very fast paced, very very technocratic. And so the stillness is challenging to reach that stillness. We can, but our culture doesn't really support that. So because we're very isolated in these single unit families, with just the mother, our partner and the child. We're not in the village setting. And so, but moving, forward with the birth process, from the womb to the first 12 months of life has all to do with the physical formation, right? This physical body. What does it mean to be in this body? And what does it mean to feel safe in this physical form? So it's all about the relationship of self-preservation, all around fear and trust. And then we move, and again, nothing is linear. This is forever. They're cycles, right? Forever moving and growing. They're all interlinked. Moves out of the machinist theory, the linear perspective of how we move. So, and then we move into self-gratification. This is all about the involvement of the emotional body. This is that landing in, and whew, now I have this physical body and I have all these sensations in my body with all that I'm feeling. And so this is all from that around about 6 months to that 2 years. What does that look like? How is the environment holding that space? Does my parents come when I cry? Am I held? And are they okay to hear me cry? Do they get activated when I cry? And it makes them nervous, so this is again that education that child is getting. And this is that relationship with guilt and pleasure. This is a vocabulary word or something we've taken out of our vocabulary word and associate pleasure with sex. There's so many pleasurable things in life. And I feel that this is so important to have. What does it mean to have pleasure? And this is where that education is secondly being evolved. And then we move into, self-definition. So from there, have our emotions. Yeah, everyone supports me in them. So now I'm starting to evolve this, who am I? Oh, I'm starting to realize I'm separate from my mother. And so with that, this is that relationship of how we move with guilt and shame. And what does that look like? And not only that, this is where that part of ourselves, this is all about the will and the ego. And with Carl Jung's work, this is where that point of starting to individuate versus become this independent child that we have pushed so hard in our culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Difference between independence and individual.
Individuation. So
Yes.
there's individuation, and then there's this independent, right? Independent,
Right.
individual. And individual is there, but understanding that we're not independent from anybody. Right.
Interdependence.
Right. We're interdependent.
Yeah.
And then we move into, once we have this understanding and becoming into self-definition, 18 months to 4 years, Then we move into that realm of that social identity, right? We have enough a sense of self. We're moving out into the world. We don't have to put on masks. We begin to accept all of who we are. And because we've been in this learning of interdependence, we can come to our parents when we have doubts, sadness, challenges, because our elders. That's what our elders are there for. But we have formed so many peer-to-peer relationships. We go to our peers who aren't able to have the wisdom. And it doesn't mean they can't assist. Absolutely, peers can assist. But we our intention is right is to bring children into the world to be the disciples of the elders, to look up to the elders, to come to the elders, because they are the wise ones. They have lived life, and versus always looking to the peers. And so from there we move into that creative identity. That's that 7 to 12. That's the self-expressiveness. And you can see kids at this age, they're just really trying to move into all that they're finding out about themselves, expressing it to the world and to their parents and into, to everyone. And then we move into and that also has to do with that relationship with truth and lies. And yes, it has all
They test that boundary.
right, absolutely. And again, that's those light and shadow parts, and they're so beautiful because it allows boundaries, right? It gives us this space to move in, and then we move into the adolescence. Those are those years that that come back around, and oh my gosh, here's the teens. It's all about self-reflection. Teen years are all about self-reflection, and we parents who have those teens who are that 14ish, and they're saying my teen is rebellion, and I'm just like, well, let's talk about those that second developmental stage. Let's look at how that was at that time, because this is the tantrums. These are the 2s and the 3s. They're expressing it. They're repeating the cycle. Yes. And so this is a beautiful space to repair. Maybe we weren't where we were as parents that we are now. This is a huge, this happens time and time again, right? We have these cycles, but this really is about self-reflection, and it's so much about archetypal identity. And if we look around and we see the archetypes that our children are hanging on to, what is that? There's a lot of conversation there with archetypal identity in our teens. So I know we're going to be getting around to like really dissecting this conversation. Yeah. Okay. And then our last one has to do with finally evolving into an adult, right? Really moving into adulthood. And that is all about self-knowledge. That is that time of really self actualization. That whole adult time is just that continual growth of, because we have so much past trauma, generational trauma. And, as we move through our 7-year cycles, each time we get to heal a little bit more and a little bit more from this transgenerational, and so it's all about the self-knowledge. Now knowing with this self-definition of who am I is just this continual self-actualization.
Okay. And how would a parent go about supporting the young adult in that self-actualization?
So it goes and it's about knowing their self-definition, right? So we have to, who are you? Who are you becoming? And if there's this, again, fragmentation, this causes so much disorientation. It causes a lot of disorientation within the psyche. And when that is unfolding, of course, all children are the teens will react, right? When teens are reacting, they're reacting from a past experience that didn't support them or still hasn't fully been seen or heard. or it could be traumatic.
Yeah.
So again, how we hold space for that, I mean, there's so many different ways to hold it. But for us as the parent, when our children are acting out, is if I'm reacting, first thing I have to do to myself is saying, okay, well, why am I reacting? Because my daughter is having an intense moment, especially
Mhm.
as a teen, right? And
Mhm.
then I have to identify first why I'm reacting, because for me to fully be able to hold what I consider what we call holding space, there's going to be fragmentation and disconnect. And first, I have to understand differentiation. What is it about me? And if I can understand that, then that opens up because we're energy, right? We're frequency. And so we send them this unspoken angst that we have in that moment. And so when we can take a pause and identify, ah, I'm in a lot of fear right now because I don't know what to do. It's as simple as that. And once we can
Right.
identify that, then we can have a more of a reflective conversation with our child that's coming from a place of safety versus a place of fear, guilt, or shame.
And
So,
is this, I know you lead, I think every year you'll lead a couple somatic experiential facilitator courses,
mhm,
right?
right,
And in throughout this course, the people will learn all about these stages in detail and
right,
how to recognize it and how to work with it and how to sort of support the unfolding of the
right,
soul,
mhm, right.
right? You know, when we were together last, you shared a story about um, how you were able to support these children to sort of identify, I guess,
Mm,
like their feelings.
mhm.
Share that story. Let's just use like Joseph and Wyatt as the names and then the two girls.
Okay, I may change those names, but I will, yes, I will just bring it up. Um, so we were having our typical rhythm, and all of a sudden we could hear in the background booing. So two children were playing soccer, and these two children, one was kind of solo, and the other child had a little team, had a little cheering team. And so the cheering team was booing the other child. And so during this process, again, we're always in this observation space versus reacting and going quickly and saying, oh, that's bad. Oh, you need to stop that. Was let's see how it moves. Well, the one child came in and spoke, I don't like that. That is making me feel very sad. And I just simply asked, so what is it that you need right now in this moment? And they said, I would like to play statues. And I'm like, okay. And I also asked, because again, honoring the autonomy of who this child is, would you like for me to go speak to the group? Yes, but I prefer to be kind of at a distance. I said, okay, that sounds right. He's letting me know what he needs for safety versus pulling him in and making him be there. So they stayed on the outskirts. And I sat down and I simply asked, can anyone share what was unfolding? And can you tell me more about the booing? What is that about? Everyone got kind of tight lipped. And then all of a sudden, one of the little ones spoke out because he found his potency. And they shared, um, well, we didn't want the other person to win. Hmm. And so again, being curious. So what is it about winning? Tell me more about your understanding of winning. Well, you'll be first. And everyone started talking. Yeah, you'll be first. You won't be last. I go, oh. And I said, okay, so what's the fear of being last? Oh, I don't know. Well, you don't want to be last. And if you're last, you're not first. And I go, okay, but there's, what else? And I go, I know for myself, if I was last, maybe I'm not good enough at what I'm doing. Well, of course you're not. You're not good enough if you're last. And I said, oh, so that's, so that, and it bled into a whole conversation about that was why they were doing, because they had to be 1st.
Mhm.
And, this stems from the whole storyline of of the beginning of our creation and embryology, right? The strongest survives, you know, and it's got to win to get in and be the Big Bang. And this is so not the storyline. That is not the storyline of creation. We start in cooperation. This starts with cooperation, and they support that one that forms that relationship with the egg to get in.
Yeah.
So it's
But
so
also just in general society. And it's like when you're watching sports games, whenever you're watching anything, like you're always cheering on like the winner. And so nobody wants to be last.
right, right, right.
But so like at the end of the day, like what was the closure of this conversation?
So the closure, we talked about not being good enough, and kind of that. And then they realized, oh my good, they realized they were booing at themselves because they weren't good enough. And then with that, I reiterated, I asked them, would you like to still play statues? And they said yes. And I said, okay, who would like to play statue? The one kid said, yes, let's go play statues. And the other one said, I don't think so. And then as soon as they got up, we all moved and started playing. They were like, okay, I'll come play. Right? There was no making the child, you're me because you're not playing.
Right.
Again, this is what I'm talking about, space.
Yes.
We have to slow down so much to bring curiosity, conversation, without the projection of our own needs not being met in these moments and in these situations.
And not being constricted to time.
Yes.
Because I'm sure this conversation was really drawn out and took a really long portion of the day. And for a regular mainstream school to have a conversation like this and be able to, in the back of the mind, the teacher is probably thinking, oh my God, break time is over. It's over in 5 minutes. We got to get this settled. And we don't have to be like that.
No.
Right? We need to make space for all of these things so that we can hold space.
Right. Absolutely. And this is imperative. Without this, children and ourselves become fragmented in what it means to be in a relationship.
Right.
And that is the ultimate of us being human, is being in relationship. And relationship where we feel safe and can have pleasure and can express and have speak our truths, and on and on and on. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm listening to how you were able to massage all this out of these children. And I think it really takes um, a lot of knowledge and sort of understanding. And so when you are teaching these courses, do you take the individuals, the adults that are participating in the classes through these different stages as an experiential process?
Yes, it is very experiential. Everything that we're talking about, we're experiencing. And just like in any space I hold, you get the choice to participate or not, or participate in what best way suits yourself. Because it's about, what are you feeling right now? Are you feeling activated? Is your body saying, what, maybe this isn't the right time for me to dive down that path just because I'm in training. This,
Right.
this in itself is an experience of actually listening versus an instructor or someone teaching the class saying, okay, this is what we're going to do now.
That makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. And I do have those who will express because there's a felt sense of safety. And one, they've been given permission to
Yeah.
check in with themselves and not do it just for the sake of doing.
Right. Right. That would be step one in connecting with ourselves,
Right.
right? Is to be there and understand when we're getting triggered or something doesn't feel right in what we're hearing,
Mhm.
right? And then we just kind of like voice that opinion and maybe you go sit somewhere and
And
work it out with yourself.
and even something as simple as just, okay, it's time to check in, because we always start with a meditation, but me not calling on anyone and
Yes.
waiting for that potency, right, to move them and that person speak. Sometimes our circles can take 45 minutes because we're slowing down enough for people just to feel, the participants to feel, what does that mean to have potency to speak? To not speak just because, oh, I think it's my turn to speak, or oh, I should speak. This is how slow it is, about being that observant.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. That's really cool. And do you find from all the classes that you've taught that do you find shifts in people? Like at the beginning, they're they're a little bit dysregulated. They're not quite sure how they want to interact. And then
Mhm.
by the end of the course, 10 months later, everyone's participating because they feel safe.
Mhm. Yeah,
They're seeing
absolutely.
that transformation.
Right. Just that, understanding what it means to feel safe, and really being, having to be shown tight, right, because they're having to learn that this process in itself of giving permission to, when you feel safe, come in, come join. If you're not feeling safe and you need extra support, what does that look like, right? I have so many people that take the course 2 and 3 times.
Yeah, right. You can't just learn it in one sitting, in one whole, like 1 year is not enough. There's so much information and so
Right.
much experience.
Right. And each time you learn, it's just like with the children, you can teach the same topic, the same, conversation. And at each year, each level, they're going to pull more and more and more. And this is that, when you get into the traditional education, it's just information's being pushed in, pushed in, pushed in without embodying what is being learned. And maybe this one kid does want to talk about dinosaurs for 3 years.
Yeah.
This is, that excites them. The potency comes out. Wonderful.
Well, that's what lights them up, and everybody should be doing what lights them up because then they learn better. Okay. So, lastly, I would like to ask, can you share a little bit about how someone could prepare for parenting before birth? Because this is what I saw written on your website. Parenting starts before birth. Understanding that the unborn child is conscious, aware, and imprinting from its environment for survival or for thriving allows for parents to move through pregnancy in a more mindful way. We merge new research on neuroscience, embryology, midwifery, epigenetics, pre and perinatal birth psychology, eco psychology, and consciousness studies with practical tools that assist in reaching a birth that best supports the mind, body, and spirit of mom, baby, and partner. Through this lens, the impact of birth is one that brings choice, empowerment, education, and attachment to healthy relationships. So, if you could briefly describe, what could one do to prepare for parenting before the birth?
One, the one layer I'll always say is a little bit about their storyline. But two is understanding these layers, that as the child is coming in and forming this physical body, that they're very sentient beings. They're very aware. They're having an experience, and they are getting their education of what it means to be on the outside world. So their whole neurological, their immune system, their everything is being programmed to what and how they need to survive or thrive on the outside. And that can look so many different ways, but to simply, when we can understand our storylines, when we're in fear, what is that about? What are my needs? How can I get those assistance? What support do I need? And understand that we're human. We're going to have, there's fear. We're going to have guilt. We're going to have shame. This is part of all of who we are. And it's learning to be gentler on ourselves as parents, because we are trying to move in a way that's more supportive, in a way that we want to listen to our children. We want to, but is having that conscious conception. is really calling that child in and being very aware that they're forming their first relationship within the womb.
Mhm. I've heard you say the word storyline quite a few times. Can you describe what is storylines? What is the storyline?
So our storyline is our experiences all the way from forming in the womb to our birth journey to
Mhm.
those first 7 years of life.
Okay,
That is
that's
our
the storyline.
that is our foundation, right? We have a blueprint, and that blueprint is the essence, is the soul, is the spirit, is that un untouched part of ourselves that's always there. It's the environment, right? That imprinting. That's if we go to epigenetics, that's the imprinting, the on top of that clouds that dysregulates, that fragments us, our ability to access the blueprint.
Okay, and we actually don't need to have an understanding of any kind of trauma from our birthing story at all. You have a workshop that you do that is about rebirth, the birth.
It's the embryo within workshop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the embryo within. Can you tell a little bit about the embryo within? Because that directly connects with the storyline.
Exactly. And this is the very beginning. This
Mhm.
is a workshop about being able to access, drop in, and explore that hidden storyline. It is there. And almost every time I do this workshop, this 1 day workshop, here everyone comes in, oh wow, this is great. I'm so curious. Again, it was the curiosity that brought them there. And just this curiosity of how can me being in the womb and my birth experience have an impact on me today? How is that still moving? And I can tell a really profound moment that I was just doing a workshop up in Idaho. And this one this one lady, she was adopted. So she doesn't really know anything about her adoptive mother. And, there's just a lot of conversation. And it's a leading up to before we do the dropping in of can you drop into your embryo? And she was very clear of all the support she needed. Never met her, just this first day, but she was very clear. She wanted me to hold this space. She needed these certain things. And within seconds, she started to weep. And for the first time in her life, she saw her light. She said she literally saw her light and just her felt sense of purpose of being shifted. I mean, again, it's not everyone has their experience, and every single person had an experience.
Right.
And another one of the participants said, I felt nothingness. I felt like there was nothing to hold on to or bounce off of. I just felt so empty and lonely. And as she's speaking it, she goes, oh my gosh, that is my relationship with my mother and always has been. She's never been able to be there attuned to me or give me any what we call dynamic creative opposition. So
Mhm.
you tap into it. It is there. And it's just the container and how it's held that allows you to feel so safe that you can drop in.
And then you can work your way out of that feeling of like
Yeah.
emptiness and not being supported because now you're rebirthing yourself and having the safety that you need.
Well, there's a process to that. So
Right.
this is just the beginning, right? Now this is where it comes from. This is that implicit memory that moves into this is a mindful, conscious, and ecological. So we've been mindful, we had this sense of emptiness. Well, now we've brought it in, right? Mindful and mindful conscious. Now we've brought it into conscious awareness
Right.
out of the implicit memory. So no, it's now no longer a mystery or to be feared.
Hmm.
So every time I fear that, it truly is going back for this one person, right? With her mother. Wow, that has been there. So now I get to go through certain principles, certain resourcing to know that this belief about myself is not true, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that goes into double binds and a lot of other
All
things.
the other things that are offered.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
Okay, so real quickly, the embryo within, you have shared stories about these people experiencing their own birth, their own embryo dropping in as themselves. As a parent, could a parent go through to re-experience the birthing process for the child that they gave birth to?
Absolutely. And this is
And
beautiful.
what does that do?
So this is such beautiful works. This goes back just as the adult, right? Just as the adult had that experience, maybe her parents not around, they're not going to do a rebirthing, but it just brought so much insight. So for parents coming in with their children, it repairs. It goes all the way back to repairing when being pregnant. Maybe it was very hectic. It was stressful. I was working 24/7. I didn't have this expansive awareness of what all of this truly meant. And so we get to go back and share that story at a pace, again, that's slow enough for that implicit memory to move forward so the child can speak. And all children will speak at so many different levels. And it will be just what needs to be heard in that moment. And I think the most recent one I just did was up in Idaho. The same workshop was the mother and the child. And I've been working with them. This is the third rebirth because she's getting close to 7. So this is a time when this rebirth, this story really starts to come up from the implicit memory, and they'll act out a lot of behavior from this
Mhm.
space. And she just kept saying, why did you take that medicine? Why did you take that medicine? The mother took medicine, but she was throwing up pretty much throughout her whole pregnancy. And she has shared that, but she was fixated. She thought that at the end, what was starting to be shown was the child thought she was making her mother sick. And she even asked that question. She says, Mama, was I the one making you sick the whole time? Because she felt that. And,
Oh,
so the daughter constantly has to hear that it wasn't her.
yeah, yeah,
But the medicine made her very sick,
right.
child in utero.
This is powerful work.
Right.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
so now that, right, that implicit memory, this storyline gets to rest. It's not
Yeah,
the driving force of your adult story.
right.
And
Right, because it could manifest in all different ways.
right. And if the feeling does come, we're aware of it. It's not a mystery of why that
Right.
is.
It's not my story anymore. I can recognize it.
Yes. Right. And I think the most profound ones, I mean, they're all profound, are the children who weren't wanted. They feel it and they speak on it.
Yeah.
And once that speaking on it is shared, when they come through the birth canal, because I had one client, and this was here not too long ago, but every time the mother would say, every time she goes to hold him, he always does this kind of, she holds and he always kind of turns his head, and he's always done that. And, she was very stressed. She wasn't sure if she wanted the child. And, throughout the session, I just simply asked at the point, at a space that again came from my intuitive self. And I asked, do you feel wanted? And because they spoke Russian, they primarily spoke Russian throughout the whole session because that is their mother tongue, and that frequency will open up so much more. But I
Mhm.
simply just asked, did you feel, or do you feel wanted? Or did you feel wanted? No, I still don't.
How old
And
was this child?
5,
Okay.
yeah, right. He never felt wanted, still doesn't feel wanted. And when we went through the birth canal and he started to rebirth, because we asked him, and it took 3 times before he was ready to go through the birth canal and have pressure applied. It took him 7 times before he came into what we call a moral reflex. And that,
Um,
so when he come out, he came to her like that, went through again, came out like that. And she just kept holding him. And,
yeah.
you could see him each and every time he'd come a little bit more. Finally, he was balled up in her lap upside down.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and then he wanted to birth one more time because he was redoing his whole process until he felt, okay, it's safe for me to come into my mother. She's now truly starting to accept me.
How does a 5-year-old know that he wants these things?
It's
It's just,
it's
it's
and it's
subconscious.
yes,
Oh
absolutely.
my gosh.
Yes.
That's incredible.
It's beautiful work. It's so profound.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So I know we keep mentioning that you have a lot of courses and classes and all of that. Um, what you do with this rebirthing, is that being taught to some of your facilitators so that they could be you and do these things?
Yes, absolutely. If you would like to, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. If that's what they would, because again, I have those who are coming to take this year long, the 7 modules, they're parents,
Yeah.
they're facilitators,
Yeah.
they're people who just want to do self exploration. There's those who are massage therapists, other do other modalities, but want to layer this in.
Right.
And so there's those who want to actually layer it into their works. Yes, then we have a cohort that we work together.
Mhm.
And based off of kind of what massage therapist this, is how you layer it in.
Yeah.
There is no one way.
Right. 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 Everybody brings their own stamp to it. Their
There's
own.
there's the foundation, the key principles that are essential, but
Yeah.
how you weave it into your works is how you weave it into your works. And again, moving experientially. It's not an
Yeah.
algorithm.
Right. Right. Gosh.
Yeah.
Such
And I feel that is
powerful.
the most challenging for me, even to because I live so experiential and get deeper into living more experiential and moving from the realms of good and bad and right or wrong is when someone is having an experience within the workshop, they'll say, is that okay? Is that right? And I go, I don't know. Share with me more. And it opens up this curiosity and this dialogue. So, because until we can
Yeah.
experience, it becomes, we then are moving just in the same way our children are moving in a traditional school setting. Right.
Yeah. Right. Right. We're so eager to find out if there's a right and wrong. I'm actually in that space right now where like I'm being led by this like meditation manifestation thing that's 11 days. And we're listening to like this Joe Dispenza breath work and meditation. And I keep wanting to like ask the instructor, the leader, like, well, is it supposed to be like this? Is it supposed, but then I was like, no, I'm not gonna ask. I'm not gonna ask. My experience is my experience. I don't need to ask. It's hard.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And just take your experience and have that creative conversation. Right.
Yeah.
Wow. When I was doing this, this is what I experienced.
Right.
What
Right.
or what does that tell you? Right. What does that mean? What is that all about? Yeah.
Right. Right. Unpeeling the layers, deprogramming. All
Oh,
right. Well, I think we covered a lot today. What do you think, Jennifer?
absolutely. Feel we did. And it was such a joy and pleasure. And yeah, I look forward to getting more into little detailed talks. And so grateful for
Yes.
you and guiding me. I need so much guidance when it comes to pulling, the works I do out of me into ways that people go, oh yeah, I get that, or oh yeah, I get that. So because
Yeah.
there's just so many layers. So I'm very grateful for you.
It's
For
so big. It's so big. And the words that are associated with what you do are kind of foreign to me. So I just kind of need like layman's terms.
that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there anything more you'd like to add?
Now, just grateful. Look forward to seeing you a little bit more.
Okay, great. Me too. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.